You define learning, the learning process, the teaching and learning methods, theories of learning, and their educational implications. Unit 3, we'll be looking at knowledge-based teaching, content knowledge, pedagogical knowledge, pedagogical content knowledge, technological content knowledge, technological knowledge, technological pedagogical knowledge, technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. You look at curriculum knowledge, knowledge of the learner, knowledge of educational goals and their philosophical basis, then knowledge of educational context, then the need for pre-service teacher training. Unit 4, we're looking at methods, techniques, and strategy of teaching, where we look at the differences among methods, techniques, and strategy of teaching. We're looking at some methods of teaching. Unit 5 will take examples of methods of teaching and their practical applications. Unit 6, we'll be looking at methods that influence the choice of teaching method. Unit 7, we're looking at teaching and learning resources. Unit 8, planning and preparation for teaching. Unit 9, we're looking at planning and preparation for teaching, where we'll be looking at teaching to cater for individual needs, classroom management, and then Unit 10, looking at the lesson plan and how we will implement the lesson plan in the class. So these are the things we'll be looking at within the 4 weeks. So today we will start looking at the first unit, which is the concept of teaching and learning. And when we talk of these two concepts, teaching and learning, there are two sides of the same coin. We can't talk about one without making reference to the other. So as a teacher, when a teacher teaches, it is expected that the learners will learn what the teacher has taught. So teaching can be defined as the process of imparting knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values to a learner or group of learners with the aim of changing the behavior of that learner or learners. So in brief, of teaching, it's a process, not one-time event, of imparting these knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values from you, the teacher, to the learner as an individual or as learners in a group, with the aim of changing these learners' behavior. So when we talk of teaching, generally speaking, teaching is the transmission of knowledge, skills, and attitudes, and ideas, beliefs, whatever, to someone with the aim of bringing about a particular change in that person. So whatever we do so far as teaching is concerned, we are transmitting the knowledge we know or we have, the skills, the attitudes, and the idea from we, the teacher, to the learner to bring about the needed change in the learner's behavior. Specifically, functions as imparting knowledge and understanding. It also functions as developing attitudes and developing skills. Teaching is a concept which can be used formally, informally, and non-formally. So in teaching, you can teach formally, informally, and non-formally. I believe you can hear me. Hello?
Please, your lines is breaking. Your line is breaking.
Wow. Okay, let's see what we can do. So formal teaching normally delivered by trained teachers in a systematic, intentional way within the school. So what we are doing in our various schools can be termed as informal teaching, where we deliver the lesson by the trained teacher, and it follows a systematic, intentional way within it, where we have time to do everything. There is timetable, there's a period for that subject. So everything is formal, and the person who is a trained professional. On the other hand, informal teaching is not formally institutionalized and does not take into account within the scope of existing curriculum. So in the informal teaching, there is no specific curriculum that you use or you follow to teach a learner. So informally, you can teach without this curriculum. The non-formal teaching is any organized educational activity outside the established formal system, whether operating separately or as an important feature of some broader activity that is intended to serve identifiable learning objective. So in the non-formal teaching, it is any organized educational activity outside the classroom or the school setting to bring about a specific feature in the learner. Teaching can also occur consciously or unconsciously. Unconsciously, teaching is seen as the structured set of attitudes, values, and practices that come out spontaneously from the teacher. For example, the teacher's utterances. There's no laid down words or sentence that you should use in a particular context. Your dressing, they come out unconsciously. You can decide to dress or wear this and wear that unconsciously. And consciously, teaching is seen as the well-structured activities followed in the institutions. Each subject matter includes subjects such as social studies, geography, history, and what have you. Because you have those effort to follow the subject matter, the curriculum, and whatever to deliver to the learners. We also have teaching as an art. This implies that teaching is an activity that depends mainly on the teacher's own intuition, personal preference, or conventional wisdom, design certain experiences to impart virtues to the learner. So if say teaching an art, when you give the same topic to two different teachers, the way they handle it will differ because the way the person will manage the classroom, the way the person will produce will differ from one another. So according to Tamako, it has been realized with time that some people teach naturally and effectively as if they have been trained to teach. The skill of teaching is thus expected to be innate rather than acquired. Yeah, we have some people who are born teachers, even though they may not acquire this meaning, but they can deliver perfectly for the understanding of the learners. This conception of teaching makes the process of teaching look more flexible and broadens the scope to include other activities that is both conventional and non-conventional can be employed by the teacher. This makes it more complex and difficult pinpoint the specific attribute that serves as basis for assessing an effective teacher. Because teaching is an art, so the way I would teach will differ from the way you would teach. And the fact that the way I teach differ from the way you teach makes it difficult to assess a particular attribute or characteristics that the two of us possess. Because everybody, what he or she thinks is the best using his personal preferences and what have you. Aspect of teaching that research cannot accurately measure because the characteristics will vary from one teacher to another because the person is using his own ingenuity and creativity to handle a particular topic. Teaching as a science. Teaching as a science focuses more on the modern conception of teaching. According to John McClure, teaching as a science incorporates a body of systematized knowledge on teaching methodology. Such knowledge, they explain, is derived from scientific investigations and in certain cases built into models and theories. So the process of arriving at such systematized body of knowledge is through constant trial of different teaching methods to find out their effectiveness for recommendation classroom teachers. By so doing, effectiveness of teaching is not left to chance, unlike in the case of teaching as an art. So when we look at teaching as a science, there are specific methods and strategies that we all follow. So we can measure or assess the characteristics of one teacher and another teacher based on as a science because there are certain principles we all have to follow. Unlike an art, where you use your own ingenuity and creativity to handle classrooms. Then the third one, teaching as a profession. Today, almost every worker claims to be a professional and their occupation as profession. That's how professionalism is defined and what constitutes a profession have been site of academic and ideological struggle between universities, bureaucrats, and academics. They all play out in a variety of settings. What then is a profession? Profession is an occupation based on specialized intellectual training, the purpose of which is to give skilled service to clients for a definite fee or salary. So when we talk of profession, it is a specialized field where the individual has to undergo training to acquire certain skills and knowledge to enable the person to offer services to his or her client, not for free, but for a fee or for salary. Teaching as a science, it can also be seen as an occupation that requires advanced education and special training. Examples include medicine. Before you become a doctor, you have to undergo this specialized training. Law, teaching, engineering, and what have you. So teaching is a profession based on the definition of the term profession because we have to go to school to acquire certain skills and knowledge to enable you to render service to your student with a fee or a salary. From these definitions, we can pinpoint out the characteristics of the profession, a sense of public service, a lifetime commitment to career, and a defined body of and skills beyond the grasp of the lay person. So we can distinguish between who is a profession and who is not based on that. Other characteristics include application of research and theory to practice, a lengthy period of specialized training, 3 years, 4 years, to acquire those specialized skills, common goals, and common purposes. The use of administrators facilitate work of professionals, control license, standards, and or entry requirements. That's why some of the professions they have to license you. And when you behave, they withdraw the license and you can't operate. So the time they introduced the teacher licensure examination was to make our teaching profession very authentic so that we can even operate outside this country. They regulate their activities rather than having outsiders regulating them. So teachers, we have our unions who make sure that they fight for our rights and what have you, and they go regulate our code of conduct and other things. Professional of ethics that sets standards for the practice of the profession and behavior of its members. These codes are safeguarded by law. There's a high level of public trust and confidence in individual who is a member of the profession. There's a high prestige and economic standard. They are all part of the characteristics of profession. From the above characteristics of a profession, we can argue whether teaching is a profession or not. But from what we have heard and what we've gone through before, we are teachers and we are still starting out, we can confidently say teaching is a profession. Any question? Hello? Any question? Okay,
No question.
let's
No,
move on to the triadic relationship in teaching. For teaching to take place effectively, there should be a focal point forming a triadic relationship. So this relationship involves the teacher, the student, who is the thought, and then the subject matter or the content or the body of knowledge. So if you look at the diagram, the teacher is always at the top, and then he has the knowledge or the content or the subject matter, and then he or she impacts it to the learner. So there's a teacher, there's a subject matter, there's what? A learner or student. Let's look at the teacher. The teacher is at the apex of the relationship. He or she is expected to have knowledge of himself or herself, know his strengths and weaknesses, his likes and dislikes. Thoughtful teachers are intellectuals who think both about subject matter and students, constructing bridges between these two. A good teacher think hard about what they want the student to do. They are coaches who support the learners as they learn to demonstrate mastery, even excellence, as independent artisans will do. Teachers must help learners develop foundational knowledge and skills. They have to provide opportunities for practice. They have to facilitate classroom discussions and keep an eye on the structure and timing of learners' learning. Teachers must act as scientists, investigating student thinking, finding ways to learn about how particular students are actively constructing their own understanding. Professional knowledge. The teacher must have professional knowledge in the field of his area. Thus, though experienced teachers might have the wealth of accumulated knowledge, they still need to know about the subject matter they are teaching, because day in, day out, new information are coming. As a teacher, even though you possess the accumulated knowledge, you should always learn new things to impact the facts to your learners. You have to know the pedagogies available to them and the most powerful ways to help students interact with that particular content you are impacting. In social studies, the teachers should have knowledge in the foundation courses of social studies, such as history, economics, geography, sociology, all the G. Then we come to the subject or the content or the body of knowledge. So the subject matter is the mastery of the subject matter to enable the teacher teach effectively as well as methods of teaching. So as a teacher, once you are the top, it means the knowledge you have is more than learners. That's why you have to research for new information so that whatever information you are giving to your learner, they are authentic, they are facts. So you must possess the mastery of the subject matter and also the method of imparting that content or that subject matter to the learner. According to Sherman, he proposed that teachers possess a particular kind of subject matter knowledge, and these are the pedagogical knowledge that allows them to understand how to present knowledge to learners. Then pedagogical content knowledge. It is knowledge of teaching and presenting a particular content to your learners. So as a teacher, you must have the knowledge in the subject and then the knowledge in the pedagogy, how you impact this knowledge to the learners who want to understand you. Then we come to the learner. The most critical shift in education in the past 20 years has been a move away from the conception of learner as robot towards an image of learner as active constructor of meaning. Learners are not empty vessels or blank slate or passive observers. Teachers must create opportunities for students to learn. Teachers become responsible for diagnosing students' interpretations and helping them alter, edit, and enrich them. Although solitude and peaceful silence provide good opportunities for learning, the social occasion of conversation, discussion, group work, and debate also play a critical role in learning as they will learn from one another. Learning is fundamentally social phenomena that takes place within the community we belong to, including the classroom community. The norm for testing the quality of a performance are determined by groups, not individuals, and one's performance is assessed through genuine participation. Through criticism, debate, proof, validation, and so on, their shared standards are observed. For example, parents edit their children's talk. Doctors prescribe the right medication when patients disease them. Knowledge is inseparable from practice. We know by doing. This means that we need to look at people while they are doing something. They are doing something meaningful. That is working on authentic problems. If we want to see what they are actually doing and what they want to do. Learner preferences as a resource. There is individual and group differences. One of the self-evident rules of schooling is that learners come with different experiences, capacities, understandings, and background. Teachers have to learn to deal with inevitable differences that students bring to school. As we are aware, students are not from the same community. They are from different communities with ethnic background. Their practices, their values are never the same. They bring all this from these various locations to the class for you, the teacher, to manage, which is a difficult task anyway. Cooperating to broadly defined as an educational opportunity in which students learn from one another. It leads to positive interdependence because learners learn from one another for better understanding. We have principles of teaching. Every teacher must know these principles at the back of his or her mind. The following fundamental logics behind teaching must be well noted by all teachers. One is active learning and participation. Teaching should ensure active participation and involvement of learners. So as teachers, as we are teaching, we must make sure that the learners are actively involved because they are the focus of the teaching and learning process. Activity has a direct influence on the internet. The student must be made to use his hand, his mind, his eyes, body, and mental capacity and other channels of learning to learn. Two, we should proceed from known to unknown. One cannot build a bridge without a clear sense of the location of both shores. Likewise, teachers cannot build a bridge between subject matter and student without having a clear sense of what student will care about, can do, and want to do. Therefore, teachers need to give learners by respecting and understanding learners' real experiences and understandings, assuming that this can serve as a foundation on which to build bridges to new understanding. So as teachers, we always teach from low to we build up the learners and teach them what they didn't know. That's why in learner plan we always follow the RPT for them and build it upon when we start the introduction of then lesson finding out what they know the topic. Then based on we can teach them what we don't know. So one of the principles teaching from what known to unknown. Another one is teaching from simple to complex. Easier and simpler materials should be followed later by complex, difficult materials. So we always introduce the learners to the simple ones, and as they mature and climb the academic ladder, the scope of difficulty level also increases to meet their intellectual ability. So we always teach from simple concepts to complex concepts. Simplicity and complexity determined from the child's point of view. Another principle is principles of variety. In the teaching and learning process, we don't use one method or techniques all out. We vary teaching methods, we vary our teaching techniques and strategies. We don't use one teaching and learning process. We use the visual, the audio, the visual, we combine them to facilitate teaching and learning. So by volume, the learners will be able to understand whatever you are teaching based on the different methods, different teaching and learning resources you are using. So we are talking about variety, making sure that we employ all the teaching and learning resources that we can lay hands on, the visual, the video, the visual, all the techniques and methods and strategy, we should employ them to teach our learners. This is motivate, sustain the learner's interest when we use variety as one of the principles. Then another one, the fifth one, the principles of individual differences. As we are aware, two individuals are the same, even two not the same. They have their own unique characteristics, different from one another. So as teachers, as we are teaching, we should take the individual differences into consideration. Not all of them understand a particular concept at the same time. We should bear that in mind and help those who need help and also encourage those who already understand to build on. Then we proceed from concrete to abstract. When the teacher and learner knows that you are going to use, you have the real object, and it's not how you have to introduce it to the learner so that when he sees it in any other form elsewhere, he or she relates to the concrete thing that you showed him so that they can imagine whatever they will see different from real thing to enhance understanding. So these are the various principles of teaching. Then we have phases of teaching. There are processes involved in teaching. These processes are termed as phases or stages of teaching. These phases are planning stage, implementation, implementation stage, and the instructional stage, or yes, instructional stage and then evaluation stage. We will look at them one after the other. In the planning stage, it involves who to teach, how to teach, and when to. This phase involves a number of activities that the teacher has to undertake. Preparing your team of work, preparing your lesson note or learner plan, your teaching and learning resources, the resource books or reference materials that you need. All these form part of the planning stage. How you are looking for furniture and equipment and what have you in the classroom. What we need to consider when planning. One, the unit to be taught in the subject. We have to know exactly the units that we need to teach in the subject. The objective to be achieved by units. the number of teaching periods available in the timetable in the particular year, the number of periods they assign testing and assessment, the general holidays and vacations in a particular term or year must be considered. The tentative schedules fixed tests and examination by the school, the culture, sports, and whatever activities that will take place in a particular term or year must all be considered. All forms of planning stage. Then when you are done with all this, you are now going to implement it in the classroom. That's where the interaction between you, the teacher, and the learner takes place. So the implementation or instructional stage involves the transmission of knowledge to students through interaction between the teacher and the student and among with the teacher acting as a guide. There are communication that flows from the teacher to the student and from the student to the teacher. So you ask them questions, give feedback, student ask questions, you throw the question back to them, they interact among themselves. So they share ideas as the implementation of the whatever you have done is going on in the classroom. It involves interactive situation where the teacher interacts with every student and vice versa. Beyond the effective interaction occur among students themselves as well. That is what we call the classroom. Then the last is the evaluation phase. What you have planned, what you have implemented in the classroom, you have to see whether the objective set for it is achieved. So we have the evaluation phase for the third one. This phase deals with the collection and use of information for decision making for students. Here, judgment will be made about the effectiveness of the teacher, the student, the resources, the environment, and what have you. So this evaluation is not meant for the learner alone. It's meant for all that in place so far as the training stage is concerned, and how you implement it will all inform you whether your methods means your strategy have worked well for the achievement of the objective. So the assessment, you assess as a teacher based on the feedback from the learners, and then you assess the learners as well. Basically, two forms of evaluation. That's formative evaluation and formative evaluation. The formative evaluation takes place during the national session and provides information and effectiveness of the method of instruction employed. So the day-to-day teaching and preparation, the test, the assignment is that you give to your students is part of the formative assessment because you have to give them the feedback. They know where they had it wrong, where they had it wrong. They do corrections, other things. So it's building them up to meet the summative evaluation at the end of the program. So the summative evaluation refers to the evaluation conducted at the end of an instructional course of unit. So the quasi, the C, and all those end of semester examination and all those form part of the summative evaluation because that one, the learners don't feedback, they don't know where they had it wrong, where they had it wrong. They only see A, B, C, whatever as their grade. Now, let's look at the concept of learning. Learning is a process. We said teaching is a process. The same way learning is a process. It's not one time event. Both teaching and learning, they are all process. They are not one time event. So learning is a process by which we acquire and retain attitude, knowledge, understanding, skills, and capabilities that cannot be attributed to inherited behavioral part of physical. So we said teaching is a process of imparting knowledge. So the knowledge, attitude, and skills that we are imparting the learners, they have to learn all these to acquire the skills, the attitude, the beliefs, and whatever to bring about that change in the learner. According to them, learning is the change in human disposition or capacity that persists over a period of. In all the definitions, the word change stands out. The change brought about through perception, through observation, and through experience. Learning is a phenomenon which continually takes place from the cradle till we die. So every day, the human being, we learn through conversation, through listening to news, through reading much. Every day, we learn something new. That's why it's a process. Research shows that students learn and retain information at different rates according to the degree that students are involved in a lesson. The following are the percentages that people learn and remember. 10% of what we hear. So learners remember 10% of what they hear. They can remember 15% of what they see. They can remember 20% of what they see and hear at the same time. They can remember 40% of what they discuss. So if you discuss issues among your you can remember 40% of it. 80% of what we experience directly and practice. So if you experience an issue, an event directly, or you practice, you can remember 80% of it. And you can remember 90% of what we attempt to teach others. So even in your discussion group, if you are found as leading the discussion, you will be able to remember 90% of whatever you teach your colleagues. So this is the outcome of research about how people then remember things. So you can only 10% when you hear it. Most of the information you can retain. If you see, you can retain 50%. If you see, you can retain 20%. If you try to discuss among yourself, you can remember 40. And when you explain thing directly, when you practice it directly, you can remember 80%. And when you begin to teach your colleagues, you can remember 90%. So when your colleagues are asking you to teach them, you are not doing yourself any bad, or you remember 90% of whatever you are teaching your colleagues. Learning is a vital process. It means it has to pass through various stages from simple to complex and physical changes, mental and emotional. The process in learning can also be regarded as input-output process. Input process that the objects, ideas, events with the learner comes into contact. This input is conceptualized through the senses. Output process that's the observable behavior of the learner having passed through that process. Basically, a learning process involves three factors: the organism, that is the learner, the activity, that's the learning experiences, and then the outcome, the change that has taken place. Because once you learn, there should be a change. And you can't just learn without you being learned. And there's something that you learn in the content, and you help you to bring about the change that we expect from you. Principles that promote learning. For learning to be effective in the classroom, certain conditions to be met. They include when the rationale of a lesson or a sense of the lesson is made evident to the pupils who are taking part. So, in learning, we must make sure that whatever thing we want our learners to learn should be clear. There shouldn't be any ambiguity in whatever expected. It should be clear so that they fit it to learn. This is crucial principle of all educational endeavor. It is essential for the teacher to let students see the way forward or benefit of the program they intend to pursue so that they will become committed to it. So we should let our students know exactly what they will be achieving, the benefit that comes with it. It is much more incentive for students when they know the tasks set out clearly in front of them before they begin to respond or to learn the task. When the lesson material is presented in a manner which appeals to the learner and which stimulates his interest, learning take place. Students are prepared to pay attention to things which are of interest. So if you are presenting things that are not of interest to the learner, they will not pay attention to it. That's why teaching and learning materials and resources make sure that they will appeal to the interest of the learner and they will be curious to whatever we want to learn. When learners become absorbed in things which are of interest to them, they are prepared to concentrate more intellectual effort upon it than when they are summoned up for a task which has not interest them. So if you are teaching or you ask the learners to learn a particular thing that their interest is in, they are eager to learn. But those that you present to them to learn, which will not help them, their interest will not be there and they will be demotivated to learn. Lessons should therefore be interesting as well as challenging. So lessons that we teach our learners should be interesting and challenging. When children are actively involved in searching for information instead of waiting for it to come from the teacher, it helps them to. So always we should ask our learners to find out information for themselves. And by so doing, they will have the interest to learn than always waiting for the teacher to give them the information. The process of seeking and sifting take those who are engaged mentally alert. So once you are engaging the learning, you become alert and you know what's from the false information. Being alert, the facts found by the search tends to stick in the mind and are remembered on anytime you want to use that information. Searching reveals unlikely possibilities and new interests hitherto unsuspected in your search. So as learners continue to search for information for themselves, they will come across certain information that they don't even finding out that information. But as they are in the process, to come out by themselves and will be adding to the knowledge they already possess. When work is to arrange such that it meets the individual aptitudes and abilities of the conditions commence with it. So when you are asking your learners to learn a particular thing, when the thing is too difficult, they will not be interested in learning. So we should always make sure that the things we want our learners to learn are within their reach and they can easily look for information and learn it. Children are in no way alike. Individual differences may let children behave and react differently. So attempts should be made to fashion out materials that cater for individual teaching from home to home. Learning is well effective when teachers teach from what the learners know to what they didn't know, so that children will build what they know and then they will also learn what they didn't know. Teaching and learning. The teaching and learning models has been conceived with four main key components of teaching. They include objective of teaching, the content, the learning experiences, and evaluation. Objective of the lesson. The teacher has to define objectives in behavioral terms, which assist the teacher to locate the observable changes in the behavior of the. So in stating our objective, we should make sure that we state it in behavioral terms so that we can observe the changes that is taking place in the learner. Content. The teacher has to make decision about how much knowledge to be given to a student. Each level with its content that you have to give to that particular level of learning. If you give too much content to learners who have that much capacity to absorb, you are disturbing them. And if you give little knowledge to learners who have the capacity to absorb more, you are disturbing them. Therefore, we should know the level learners to give them the exact knowledge they can accumulate or they can assimilate. Learning experience. After deciding the objective, the teacher will think of the type of content and learning experiences which will help achieve its objective. Learning experience can be defined or described as the external conditions which the learner interacts with to bring about desirable changes in disposition. So if you are teaching about mountains and you send the learner to a mountain, that outside condition will help the learner to understand the mountain that you are teaching. Because the learner will interact with the external condition where the mountain is. Then he will climb, he will touch, he will do so many things, ask so many questions, and it will help him to understand. So the learning experience, they are the external conditions that will help the learner to interact, bring about that desirable change in his or her disposition. Then evaluation is the collection and use of information decision making. It can be done through oral questions, through quiz, through essays, through whatever means that you want to secure or have the information about the learner to take decision on him or her. So teaching model, we have the objective then to the content, to learning experience, and then the evaluation. These are the four teaching and learning models that we have. Let's move on. The teaching and learning model, it is evident from the diagram that the statement of objectives in the behavioral terms facilitate the teacher to observe the learning outcomes during the teaching and learning interaction. Appropriate learning experiences in the form of methods need to be selected for the effective transmission of knowledge. And then the success of teaching can be evaluated by devising suitable testing programs based on specification identified by the teacher to enable you to evaluate your learners' teaching. Let's look at some theories of learning. We have Albert Bandura's social learning theory. Bandura says organisms learn new responses by observing the behavior of a model and then try to imitate that model. He and his colleagues showed a group of children fail with aggressive content in which an adult punched an inflated doll. They also showed another group of children some film that had neither aggressive nor passive content. They then compare the play behavior of both groups and found the children shown aggressive film tended to be aggressive afterwards, which was not the case of the other group of children that show film which were not aggressive. Subsequent studies by Bandura show that observing aggression creates aggression in children. The children do not imitate aggressiveness when the person they observe being aggressive is punished for the aggressive behavior. Nevertheless, they may become aggressive in future. What we are saying, or Albert Bandura is saying, is that children learn through observation and imitation. So whatever we are doing as teachers, even at home, they observe us and they begin to imitate. So wherever we find ourselves as teachers, we should behave such that when the learners are observing and imitating, they are observing, imitating the correct behaviors from us. So you see your children taking empty containers, adding soil, water, setting fire that they are cooking. It means they observe their parents, their mother in the kitchen, and they are imitating what the mother was in the kitchen. The same way as they show the aggressive picture, when you begin to beat your wife or your husband, the children will see it and begin to imitate. So Bandura is saying that children learn by observation and by imitation. They want to practice what they have seen. Four conditions for successful model of someone's behavior. That's attention. The observer must pay attention and recognize distinctive features of the model. Retention. The observer must symbolically retain observed behavior. He or she must form some type of image or mental state that corresponds to what they are doing. Motor reproduction. The observer must be physically capable of reproducing the model behavior. When the observer lacks the ability to reproduce an observed behavior, motor reproduction cannot occur. Then motivational process. The observer must be motivated to demonstrate the modeled behavior. The behavior cannot be reproduced unless conditions are favorable. What are the classroom implications of Bandura's learning theory? Teachers must set examples of behaviors learners to observe. They should expose students to a variety of exemplary lives and symbolic models. We should teach basic skills of mastery. We do not condone any unacceptable behavior. Students must be motivated for good imitation. So in our classroom, we should help our learners to acquire this. We should make sure that the examples we cite are good examples that we need to imitate. We should use several varieties of examples. We should teach them basic skills for them to master. And when they do certain things that are not good, we should let them know what the behavior they have is not appropriate. Then we should make sure that we motivate them to imitate the good models. Thorndike connection. He also provided an environment in which a variety of responses could occur, and the learning of the type of behavior will depend largely upon chance and satisfaction. His basic experiment was to observe the behavior of cats confined in a cage with small piece of meat or fish just outside. The cat's tongue was get out of the cage by pressing a lever or some other device. The cat's initial behavior tended to be of a random nature. It will claw, it will scratch, it will bite, it will push its tail through the bar until one of these behaviors activated the release of the bar accidentally. The cat then gets out of the cage. When the cat was returned cage repeatedly, it gradually reduces time it takes the cat to release itself from the cage. After about 20 tries, the cat will press the bar immediately. He concluded that learning had taken place, which was gradual and which was the result of the organism's reaction to the environment. It should, however, be said that this gradual learning process, this trial and error learning, while it may be effective, is not always efficient. Thorndike's practical rules of learning. Law of readiness. The desire of an organism to perform an action. It is the psychological condition of an individual to embark on a task. Law of exercise. It is divided into the law of use, repetition, and continual practice, and the law of disuse, when a modifiable connection between stimulus and response is not made over a period of time, the strength of that connection is weakened. Then law of effect, response followed by pleasure will be strengthened, and response followed by pain will be weakened. That is, the outcome of the experience will be determined whether an action will be repeated or not. Classroom implication of connection connectionism. Consider the mental, cognitive, capability or readiness of the learners when planning the curriculum. Because if the learner is not, the mental ability, the cognitive ability are not ready, they will find it difficult to learn the curriculum. Do not force learners to learn if they are not mentally ready. When you identify that your learners are not mentally ready to learn a particular concept, don't force them. Motivate them so that they repeat actions that are positive. Present material in a logical and more coherent way to learners. Consider the importance of exercise or practice in learning. So constant practice will make them perfect. As the cat continues to find ways of getting out of the cage to eat the meat, we should do enough exercises, enough practice for our learners for them to become master of whatever concept we are teaching them. Consider punishment as the last option in reducing undesirable behavior rather than consider negative reinforcement. Learning activities revolve around the learner. Therefore, the learner should be at the center of the teaching and learning process. This will be your assignment so that when we meet next week, we will look at their learning theories. That's Pavlov's classical conditioning theory, Skinner operant conditioning theory, and Gestalt theory of learning. You will learn around it, and when we meet next week, we will talk about it, and then we'll move on. Any questions so far? Hello?
Um, no
Any
question.
question? Yes. Any question? Okay, if no question, then this is the end of today's interaction. I will send you the course outline and then what we learned today for your reference. And when we meet, if you have any question too, you can ask. So see you next week.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Bye bye, sir.
Bye.